I won't take offense to that.
I'm Scotty Bevel.
I didn't bring my khakis or I'd be Christopher.
The best I could find, Scotty.
Yeah, don't take it off. I've got headgear goes with that.
We'll just leave it right here.
Nice.
Hey, are you in the right room? Cool. So we're going to talk about the chaos of leadership and the leadership of chaos. Let me ask you a question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you love your reality? On a scale of 1 to 10. How many of you are a 10? 9? 8? 7? 6? Everybody 6 and below, you're in the right room for sure. And the 7, 8, and 9s, we're going to tell you how we get to 10. Our way to 10 may not work for you. But I'd say on stage here are two people who love their reality. And it's because we understand the difference between subjective and objective reality. So it's my pleasure to introduce Scotty Bevel, and I met a number of years ago. And he said, man, Christopher, I like your 3 words, intention, awareness, and confront, but I like my 3 words better, integration, awareness, and contribution. And I said, oh, that's very nice. I like those words too. And so we've had a relationship now for a number of years and words. You know, I think the thing that I most love about Scotty is his dedication to living wide, to making a contribution, to integrating his life in everything he does so that it has amazing harmony, and his dedication to studying, teaching, promoting, questioning leadership. So I'm really honored to spend this time with him. Scotty?
Yeah, thanks. I'll add to that. In 2009, I ran into Christopher, and I'm not a trust-first guy, and I believe trust is given. So I said, people say trust is earned. We've all heard trust is earned. And one of the things that we talk about is that if we don't give trust, then we expect people to earn trust, and I haven't done anything in my contribution to warrant your earning of my trust. It becomes an obligatory relationship. So I met Christopher. I was focused on the professional development of everyone. Doesn't matter if it's a not-for-profit organization, a small business, a large corporation, leaders who think they have it all figured out, all these individuals. And then Christopher came in and I saw this intention, awareness, and confront mantra. And it was very personal. It was very selfish. It was very one. And Christopher redefined selfish for me. He also redefined retired. I appreciate that one. Years ago, he said, about a year ago actually, he said, well, it sounds like you're retired. And I said, help me understand. He said, well, you get up every day and you do exactly what you want. And some of the things I want make me money. Some of the things I want don't make me money. Some of the things I want to make me money don't make me money. So what I did find, though, is that in my path, in my journey, what he talks about, how he talks about it was fundamental to even being able to accomplish what I encourage everyone to do. So we talk about integrated living and contribution. We are always contribution. You're all contributing right now to us. Otherwise, these fine people wouldn't want to take our picture. So we're always contributing. So for me, it came back to awareness. Am I aware of my contribution? Then there was the big discussion that said, well, maybe I'm contributing to the solution versus the problem. And then the solution became subjective. Well, what's right? What's wrong? Christopher's work had an answer for that as well, or at least a response. And when we talked about right and wrong, we said, well, do we agree? And fundamentally, it came back to agreements. And so we started with vocabulary to agreements. Over time, there's now this very cyclic, almost tornadic type relationship between all of this, where I can find myself in contribution becoming aware. I can be in an integration state and find a disintegration behavior. And so I hope today when you guys leave that you at least have an idea with these words how to question yourself and who you are. And those of you senior leaders in the crowd, please pay attention, because we use these to question you guys, and you don't always like that. And we'd like you to kind of relax on that a little, because what will change for you truly is everything. One of my favorite statements that we said was our ability to confront. And Christopher said, confront what? And I didn't have an answer. And he said, confront anything. And this gives us the ability to navigate the seemingly innavigable. So these are our words we'll go through today. Hopefully you hear those references, and I'm glad you guys are here.
Cool. Yeah, so here's our plan. Our plan is that Scotty and I are going to explain our words to you. That might take 15 or 20 minutes unless we get really wound up. And then we're going to ask you what else you want to know or talk about for the rest of the time. So here we go. I received the greatest honor recently that I could imagine for my 25 years of work with the responsibility process. And if you're unfamiliar with that, you'll see this pop up on the screen from time to time, and I have copies of this poster for everybody in the room. I've been working with the responsibility process for about 25 years, and it's the most powerful information I know and have to share because it explains what happens in our minds and our brains when things go wrong. And how many times a day do things go wrong for you? Right? Lots, right? And so I was doing a seminar, and the senior leader came up to me at the end of it, and he said, "What I like about this material is that you don't say it's easy." And I said, "Well, tell me more." And he said, "Well, most leadership experts have a 1, 2, 3 linear, do these steps formula, and you'll be a leader." He says, and you don't say that. What you say is, you will face trial after trial after trial, anxiety after anxiety after anxiety, and here's a set of tools that you can use to fashion clarity and order out of chaos. So our world is not getting any less chaotic, which means leadership is never going to be linear. So I'm going to introduce you. We're going to try this. I'm going to introduce you to Scotty's words, and Scotty's going to introduce you to my words, and then we each get a chance to fill in whatever's left out. So let me start with integration. If you want to challenge yourself about this word integration, I would ask you this. How many of you have parts of your life that you keep separate from the other parts? How many of you have parts that challenge the other parts in terms of the integrity and the ethics and the values and who you want to be when you're in that role? So integration, for me, is the principle of demanding that I integrate every part of my life, and if I can't integrate it, I don't go there, I don't do that. I want to be the same person in all of my roles wherever I am, whether I'm here on stage or whether I'm saying I love you to my wife on the phone afterwards, or how did your day go at school with one of my kids. What you may not know about me is that in my teens and 20s, I didn't like some of my behavior. In fact, I was really disgusted with some of my behavior, but I didn't know how to change it. It was embedded pretty deep. And so I went on a search for integrity, being whole. And that's what led me to the responsibility process. So the relationship between responsibility and integration is that by practicing responsibility every day, and responsibility is not who I am, it's not my character, it's what I practice, and I practice every day when things go wrong. By taking ownership of my reality, I'm constantly integrating the objective, the out there reality with the subjective, the internal reality, until I get closer and closer and closer and closer to being a 10 on the I love my reality scale. So that's what integration means to me. And when Scotty says integration is one of his words, I think what you mean is you want to be whole. You want to be in harmony with all the parts of you and with your environment. Accurate?
That's
close enough?
It's very accurate. And
cool. Awareness. Awareness, if you're not familiar with this, is the #1 leading component of any leadership development program for the last 5 or 6 decades. Self-awareness. Well, why? Well, I'll tell you why I think. And that is that leadership starts with self-leadership. I'm kind of tired of leadership as influence, because how many leaders do you know that influence in ways that just feel horribly wrong to you? Lots? Yeah. So I'm on a kick to say, you know what? Leadership is responsibility, and that starts with who I am, what I stand for. Do I know myself? Can I predict my behavior in situations? Do I know how to get out of chaos? And you know, if you get your values straight, your purpose straight, your beliefs straight, what you stand for straight, if you decide to play a huge game, so that you need lots of partners to help you and there's room to play this big collaborative game, then you would not be surprised to look around and see people who want to follow you or be your peer. So awareness means becoming ever more aware of our internal reality in the relationship to our external reality. And if that sounds like fuzzy, foo-foo stuff, it's not. It's at the core of leadership of any type. Close enough, Scotty? I imagine you'll have some things to add. So Scotty's contribution. Well, this is sort of why we're here, isn't it? Right? We want to know how we're either contributing to the solution, or part of self-awareness is also understanding if we're contributing to the what? To the problem. One of the things the responsibility process has taught me is that you and I and the people that we work with and the people we coach spend a huge amount of time and energy contributing to the problem as opposed to the solution. And they don't even know it. They're not aware. And part of what we're trying to do with the responsibility process is bring that awareness forward so we can stop the wasted thought and the wasted action of contributing to the problem and start contributing to the solution. So I'll stop there and let you explain my words.
Yeah, well, I'll start with intention. I think I'm standing next to it. When I ran into this in 2009, and he talked about the 3 keys, intention, awareness, confront are the 3 keys to responsibility in Christopher's context. And it asked me, and I said, well, what are my motives? And there's a distinction between intention and my motives. My motives are why I do something. My intentions are what I intend to do. And so my intentions got wider and wider and wider, where I intended to go to the store. And now I'm intending to live differently. I'm intending to wake up tomorrow and do something for me, to contribute to myself. And so intention became, for Christopher, his phrase to me was, I have an intention to operate from responsibility and power in everything I do. And that got really wide for me, and I thought, oh my God, I'm never going to live up to myself. So now we're back going into that self-evaluation thing, and that's when I was introduced to advice from your perspective, which really helped me understand that we're always gaining or seeking advice. I think my comment about 1.5 years ago was, my clients don't hire me for advice, but man, they'll take it. And when it doesn't work out, they'll blame me. And then I end up to get another job. And so intention for me was what? Intention was to operate from this mindset. For me, my intention was to contribute every day to someone else. If I can lessen something for any one person, whether it's my mother, my niece, my nephew, my family, whomever it may be, one of you, some clarity that you've achieved, that contribution makes your life a little less tortuous. That's my favorite word, by the way. But a little less tortuous, a little less infringing from other people. And then Christopher said, well, from intention, now that I have intention prior to my action, I want to be aware. And he came to awareness, and I said, wait a minute, we have 6 words. Turns out we have 5 words, but because we share awareness, which worked out very well because we talk about shared reality and shared awareness. So I thought, oh, we could sell that. Turns out, not so much. So what we come into here is this shared awareness. And what is the awareness? And for Christopher, he said, you know, I really want to look at everything. How many of you have children in the room? HR is not here. You can answer.
Children in the room?
Yeah. There's a comma. Punctuation's necessary. If you're on Facebook, you know why. But with the awareness, you walk in on your children or you walk in on someone, and the first thing that hits you is, well, this is wrong. And then you respond, and the first thing you get is justification. And awareness for us was to walk in and say, well, this feels wrong. So we have a rule. And the rule says, if I approach a situation and I deem it immediately something's wrong, then there must be something I don't know. And that begins awareness for me. So my intention to operate this way comes to an awareness where I start asking questions. And I said, raise the inquiry in the presence of wrong for the sake of not being the idiot, which I got great at, hence the self-employment thing. So when I go into awareness, we start looking and say, well, help me understand. I'm still going to get justification, but at least I'm going to have more information, and that allows me to suggest or recommend to someone and say, well, what if we had gone this direction? Or have you thought about this in response? And it primes people, which is different than walking in and stomping your feet and saying, hey, this is wrong. You need to do it my way, just like my sticker on my laptop says, I live my way, be reasonable, do it my way. I was that kind of manager. And so this is a little bit of the past, because I'm now reformed. But what happens is in that awareness event, I can say, well, you know what? I'd like to raise my awareness. I've been known to say, help me. Help me understand why you're doing these idiotic things. And another year went by and I said, help me understand why this is working for you. Are you getting the results that you want? And I became more effective over time. And then became the tough one. And this is the tough one for managers, for leaders, for me. How many people, when I say confrontation, get a feeling of negative connotation? Confrontation at work. How many people have heard conflict is good? I'm self-employed, that's a myth. People keep telling you conflict is good, and then I found out there's actually good and bad conflict, but it's subjective, so it's only by agreement. My office can probably tolerate a little higher level of confront than some of your other offices. For example, when one of my people tells me to shut up, it's okay in certain contexts. If I walk into, say, a client site and tell someone to shut up, how's that work for you? Not so well. So confront truly has nothing to do with anything other than to face. So Christopher told me, he said, no, confront is not negative confrontation, which I'm really good at. I'm kind of aggressive. So what I got was confront really means to face. To face what? To face anything. And then I had an epiphany. All this communication, all this ambiguity, all this, you know what I mean? How many people here say, you know what I mean? This is my favorite thing. You walk in the room and you talk about these huge, long equations because you're a project manager. You're probably talking to a BA, so you don't even know what the hell you're talking about. And you walk in and you say, well, you know what? You know what I mean. So I have another phrase. I said, if you are a person who says, you know what I mean, a lot or often, then you're a person who is banking on my inference skills. So I'll assume that I knew what you meant. And then from that meaning, I'll make assumptions and conclusions, and then you'll turn to me and say, what the hell are you doing? I thought you said you knew what I meant. I'm like, I thought you wanted me to tell you I knew what you meant. So if you find yourself saying, you know what I mean a lot, remember that we're not confronting. We're just kind of hoping, and maybe it's a touchy subject, so we don't want to go there together. So we avoid those things because my inference is terrible, people. You know, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and we went from crazy parties to you got to hate your parents to be cool. And then you come into the years 2000, so my inference is instantly going down this negative path. It's been my life journey. It's when I infer things, I assume the worst. Do you guys assume the worst? Are you assume the worst people or assume the best people? We're agile. We think everything's happy path, right? I don't even know what happy path means, but you know what I mean, right? That's exactly where we are. So here's this confront thing. And so the first thing I want is permission. Can I confront you when this occurs? Can I bring this to you? How can I effectively bring it to you so that I don't get resistance? If you guys are managers, you don't even need permission. You can actually offer this to your people. It's this weird new thing. You can actually say, hey guys, you can push back on me this way at this time in this place. When my director or my boss or my CEO is walking by, please do not tell me to shut up. But if we're behind closed doors in a war room, that's why they're called war rooms. How many of you guys have dedicated spaces for your teams? Do you think that HR is allowed in those spaces while you work? I would say the most effective teams would like it if HR did not come in that room while we work, because we have a much higher confront than the company's norms. And so as a result, we get to different maturities of confront. And this has been a real big struggle for me because my confront's really high. The hell are you doing? You're wrong. Why are you doing it this way? Do it my way. And I came from this very command and control space. Now, how do you confront without antagonizing? And so that kind of brought me to a new one. So about the last few years, I've been walking around Christopher, asking him a bunch of questions. This way, if anybody says anything, I say, well, Christopher said. This way, if I'm wrong, I can blame him. Then responsibility starts all over, and I pay another $100. So this is where we come into intention, awareness, confront on my personal growth, my personal accountability, not your ability to hold me to account, Mr. Manager, but this is my personal growth. When we come back into awareness, integration, contribution, this is about my professional growth. This is how I intend to navigate. So believe me, I am holding myself to account at a very high level. If you are holding me to account as well, I probably have some internal responses to that may not be voiced. So make your agreements, get permission, make an offer, and say, hey, if I'm not giving you what you need, here's a great way to let me know. Stop sending me email. That would be great.
Cool, give him a hand. By the way, I meant to tell you 20 minutes ago that if you came here for 3 tips about how to do something right, you're not going to get them. Right? This is an awareness event. This is about scrambling eggs in your mind so that hopefully you'll see some of these things. So let me take a couple of minutes and add to what Scotty said and see if I can make this more real. Let's talk about awareness. What does 99.9999% of us and our colleagues say when something goes wrong? We say, what should I do? Don't we? Right. This happened, what should I do? Or we say, what's the right answer or thing to do? True? Maybe? Yes? Cool. So here's what we know about that. Is that we know when you and I talk about should and shouldn't, we map to shame in the responsibility process, which means there's no learning, no growth, no new information. Our premise is that we suck, we're not good enough. When we ask what's the right answer, right, then we go to obligation, right and wrong, which we also know in obligation, the premise is we're trapped, we're screwed. There's nothing that we can do. It turns out that what intention, awareness, and confront has taught me is that when things go wrong, the best question is, what do I want? Look at this mess. What do I want about it? Turns out that what I want maps to responsibility, which is the place in your head. These are mental states, which is the mental state where you are feeling free, you are feeling powerful, self-empowered. You are feeling like you're an agent in generating choices and action to move things forward. So as a little awareness example, just keep on joining society and saying, what should I do? What should I do? Or what's the right answer when things go wrong? Or maybe face what we've learned about how the mind works, right? And start asking yourself a new question, which is, look at this mess. What do I want about this? So these are the 3 keys to practicing responsibility, and you can also say they're the 3 keys to personal mastery, they're the 3 keys to leadership, they're the 3 keys to anything, right? What do we want? What do we know and understand about where we are and where we want to be? What do we need to face or confront so that we can start to learn something? Right? Repeat. That's what I would add to what you said.
Sure.
What would you add to my talk about integration, awareness, and contribution?
How many people have heard someone say, don't ever say anything that you don't want said on the 6 o'clock news? How many of you are on my Facebook? We have an agreement, do we not? I could be in a conversation with Dr. Avery, and I have permission. My mother is not allowed to comment on my Facebook, so she will jump right into our conversation and say, why aren't you at dinner? That's integration. Contribution, guys, is really what is my impact on others. How many of you heard of situational awareness? Yeah? How many of you are chaos-driven? You love chaos, you love change, right? We're agilists, no? Anybody come to the conference to debunk agile? There's always 1 or 2 that are like, I'm here to show them that they're wrong. I love those. And one of the things that we've been talking about and jostling around in my office is about that chaos to order, that trust in the universe, the trust in the flow, trust, everything's a wavelength. Whether it's broadband or baseband, it's just a wavelength. And so what are my wavelengths? When am I up? When am I down? How many think that their spouse has about a 4-day cycle? But every 4 days, the world ends, and then it's this. Well, the beautiful thing about predictable people is they're controllable. Those are the ones with the spouses I'm talking about. So I'll say again, when we talk about agile, we talk about chaos to order, order to delivery, and chaos for the sake of delivery. I want it to be crazy. We look at business process management, customer relationship management, project and portfolio management. Let's not confuse agile and project management, because I would argue that agile is product management. That's why most of your project management tools don't work. If you are a project manager, we apologize, we have confused you because we wanted you to buy our stuff. The reality is, folks, that Agile is and only ever has been product development. You will find many, many, many skills and techniques, but guess what happens in product visioning? How many people have a customer that isn't really your customer? They're the business representative of your customer. How much of this do you think they could benefit from? How aware are you of our actual customers' use? I'm a customer. I got an opinion about this damn thing about every 10 minutes. So when we have these customer feedback, how many times do you think you're the developer for this business unit representative customer, and in fact, you're the real customer because, well, I work at Apple and I have this phone. So as a developer, as a customer, can I be clear? And user stories help with that clarity, yeah? As a customer, I know I'm the developer. But as a customer, here's what I want. So when we look at product management and the chaos to order, order to delivery, delivery to chaos, there's no delivery bridge. There's no, well, we've delivered, now it becomes chaos. How many of you know that no good plan ever survives first contact with a customer? So our customers are a source of our innovation. Innovation says you don't know what you don't know. So it's their generation of our chaos. So I don't want to be the chaos. So all you developers keep telling your bosses that they don't know what the hell they're doing, please stop. Don't be the source of the chaos. Be the guy that knows how to navigate the chaos, because I know which questions to ask. I know what behaviors to have. I'm cognizant of my behaviors. I know my relationships. I know my communications. Now I can factor in the culture, more chaos. But I have a way now. I have this forest through the trees that I can walk through. You guys can even like manufacture these at Home Depot, I promise. You can go to work and say, boss, I need to talk. Because I'm not sure that we're on the same page. And I'd really like it if you let me have long hair in the office, because if you keep asking me about it, I'll make it spiritual. Now you can't talk about it.
And I'm willing to hang out here until we talk about this.
Absolutely. And that becomes the entire cycle that will go from order to, chaos to order, order to delivery. Delivery in and of itself generates chaos. And without chaos, there is no change. Right, finance guy? Finance people walk a straight and narrow line. That's why they struggle trying to budget us. Just throw money at us. We have no problems with that. We're agile people. Unlimited budgets, variable scope, fixed time. Leave me the hell alone. That's our game. So I hope you guys see this cycle and you see this life cycle, and I hope that you start to ask those questions. And if you don't have anything to go in addition, I'd like to know the questions of application and mastery.
So what questions do you have? It's our intention to make more of a contribution to you by having a dialogue with you about this subject. What I'm willing to say is that we're willing to face anything you got. So question over here. Can you be real loud? Stand up?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. I'm an old guy, so I don't hear well, so.
Okay. So one thing I've intentionally been learning about is personality, more about how to be more effective with interacting with my teams, is first understanding their personality and how they best communicate, and so I can be more effective with communicating with them. And I like the line that you said around, you want to know, I'm not getting you what you need, here's a good way to let me know, right? So I really like that line. Sure. And that's kind of in that spirit of that. And so I'm wondering, in this theme of responsibility, what do you view as a leader's responsibility in understanding each of their, the folks that they lead, their personality to be the most effective that they can be?
Do you have a favorite person you want to get an answer from?
You mean between the two of you?
Yeah.
No, I'd love to hear both of your perspectives.
So first of all, I applaud your intention to know and understand your people. That's awareness, yes? And willingness to confront the fact that people are different. So here's what I'll say about that. I think that all the understanding of personality stuff is really fabulous. To me, it's secondary to something else in leadership. So, you know, it gets to be a point that if you are actually the leader of enough people, you may not be able to know them one-on-one. So I started my practice of leadership coaching and consulting in 1991. My job was to figure out how to teach software project leaders in one of the largest companies in the world how to build teams. And I decided to hang it on the notion of shared responsibility. Right? So how many of you are in this position? You share responsibility with somebody else to get something done, but you're not in charge of them, they're not in charge of you, but what you get done depends on what you do together, including your deliverable, your productivity, your credibility, your reputation, eventually your paycheck. How many of you are in that situation of shared responsibility with others? Yes, so this is completely counter to all of the models we have in our head from the last 5,000 years about how to organize work, right? We depend on single point accountability. And yet we're all in this position of shared responsibility. So what is that stuff? Well, it's a feeling of ownership. Right? So accountability, we could talk about that as objective. We write them down. We have all these systems. This is what must be done. But accountability and responsibility are different. It turns out if you don't have a pretty high sense of ownership, then the accountability is going to suffer. And here's what I learned about that, is the approach to team building in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and into the 90s was personality inventories. Right? Let's get everybody together and do Myers-Briggs or DISC or one of those other, in the hopes that we will understand each other better, so at least we're willing to put up with each other who are different than we are. It's easier for us to face it when we understand why they act like that. Got it? So in postmodernism, starting in the 1990s, and yes, I have a PhD in this stuff, so I'm an organizational scientist and I can talk technical. The literature on group cohesion started moving from interpersonal attractiveness as the primary force to outcome interdependence. In other words, feeling like we're in the same boat together, right? That we're playing a positive win-win game, that if I see Scotty working hard towards his goals, he's making my life easier, and it makes me want to work harder towards my goals. There's also negative interdependence, right? So we're making a contribution to each other, which makes us want to lean in towards the team, right? So what I would say to you is that understanding your people and building relationship and understanding personalities is important. If you don't have time and luxury and expense to do personality inventories, just discover what jazzes them and how they could get more of that at work, right? What jazzes them beyond a paycheck, and how you could support them in pulling that out at work. But I would say the first thing I would pay attention to as a team leader is what must we do as a group that's bigger than any of us, requires all of us, and none of us can claim individual victory until the team gets there. And I would host that as a dialogue, as a conversation, until everybody's looking at each other and saying, oh, that's what we're a team to do. When you have that, not only should you have alignment, but you should have integration of all of the parts, seeing all the other parts as important to making this happen. So that's where your question takes me.
Yeah, I'll add to that. The first thing I ask is, do I have a team? There's certain trigger words that I think we're sensitive to in this kind of area of the room here. When you said, what is the leader's responsibility to the team's needs? And I don't necessarily agree with the accuracy of that question. And I'll say why. Because as a leader, I'm useless unless you guys do. Now I'm going to contribute, I'm going to get in. I'm a guy that'll roll up his sleeves, and we'll talk about how to do this better once we move all this stuff. So a team to me is that shared. When you said contribution, the first thing I thought was conscious contribution. This consciousness is, I know I'm contributing to you, you contribute to me. So how can I raise awareness in one hand of what allows me to be a great leader, what helps me help you, and then on the other hand, raise that same inquiry and say, tell me how to help you. Tell me how to lead you. There is no rule that I'm aware of that says because I'm the leader, I'm required to know every one of you, because I tend to start to justify. Well, she's a Gemini, you know how they are. I pick on Farah for that. But those are the kinds of things where if we start to label as a leader, I was just talking to Doc before this talk, and I said, you know, one of the things I like to see is that emergent leadership. So you're the leader because of a hierarchy of accountability. If you try to align your role to that hierarchy, then you're actually aligning yourself to external accountability. I'm not sure you're going to find the success you look for. So your awareness of the organization. Now, we've agreed to the dress code. We agreed to work here. We agreed to assume this position. How best can I facilitate the office that I've been awarded or that I've been appointed to? And that's going to come from that inquiry. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you do. Watch the HR questions. So get a Jessica. She's real good at telling me that's an HR question. You can't ask that. But ask them and say, what helps you guys do this? Do you work better this way? What do you need? Are you in an impediment removal business? Yeah. So what's the best way to win a team? Get stuff out of their way. Look what we did. This stuff, now you can do what you need to do. By the way, do you guys want to know what I need? What I want? So defining what you want, understanding what they want based on their input, not based on their label, not based on their test scores, not based on their evaluation, based on the words of their mouth. Everyone, I love this story. Well, software developers are type B. You ever work with them? That's not true. They just don't talk to us. But if you get in their circle, they'll tell you exactly what they're thinking. They'll tell you exactly why you're wrong, and then prove it to you, and then replace you with a shell script. Now you have no job. So I would argue, first question, do I have a team? Are we consciously contributing to one another? Can we? Are we in a position to do that? And you keep that in your team. You don't want to go to your boss and say, well, I'm kind of useless, so I'm going to let them tell me how to be a leader. But you can go to your team and say, guys, tell me how to best represent what we're trying to accomplish here. And we go back to, I saw a couple of heads over here, that we're in product development. We're in product management. How best manage the product? Well, I got relationships, behaviors, and communications with my product. How many people have thrown their phone across a room before and then immediately regretted it because you know what you paid for the damn thing? That relationship is the same thing. So being cognizant of your product, being cognizant of your team, and I'd say you ask the question, your team's in pretty good hands already. So keep raising that inquiry and go back to your team and ask them, can we make an agreement and work together? And then when you become conscious in contribution, you're going to find that we have a much higher tolerance for who you are. Maybe team members start growing their hair out. I'm really trying to get all of you to have long hair so I can stop hearing about it.
Hey, Scotty, I think I'm going to interrupt you in a second because I want to recommend there's an ebook you can download from my website from the resources section, which
it's
I think
the next slide.
Is the next slide.
Yeah.
It's the one on that side, the 5 flawless steps to building a strong executive leadership team. Has nothing to do with leadership team. So it's the same 5 steps to build any kind of team, and it's what I talked about. The first step is, what are we a team to do? Yeah. The second step is, what's in it for you and what's in it for me? What are our interests? What are our passions? Why are we here? Third step is simply keep operating agreements, which you probably know pretty well. Those are the big 3. I've been following that framework for more than 20 years and taught it to thousands and thousands of technical professionals, and I get emails all the time from people saying it's magic. It's a repeatable framework that just works for building teams. Well, why? Because it focuses on the team as the unit rather than on the individuals as units. Right? So what we're trying to do is to get everybody in the group to feel the team as a unit, obviously. And Agilists do it best in terms of all over the world. So if you struggle with team leadership, team building, I'd recommend that to you. Other question? Next question. There's a hand back there. Can we get a microphone there? Tony's running with the microphone.
Tony Piazza, ladies and gentlemen.
Would you stand up, please?
My question relates to leadership styles. I've basically seen a common thread with the leadership, the whole concept of leadership, but I'm a consultant and I go into different companies, different industries. The question relates to the silos and the different leadership styles. IT leadership seems to have their own unique style. Legal has their own unique style. Can you just kind of speak to that and how you kind of approach the different silos of leadership styles?
First thing that comes to my mind is conditioning. I struggle with the leadership style of IT because I'm an IT leader, and if you can see me coming, bravo. Because I walk in looking like this, and I just took leather off in the parking lot. So I would argue, I use the whole cow, be nice. But no, when you say leadership styles, I've seen different quadrants. We talked about just last night about L1, L2, L3, where there's everything from capability. Christopher has a different spin that I appreciate very much. And you say, what kind of a leader are you? Am I value-driven? Am I purpose-driven? Am I aligned? Back to integration. Integration, folks, is a facilitator of alignment for me. How do I know that I'm aligned to who I am? Am I aligned to my product? Is my product aligned to my business? Is my business values the same as my team's values? And talking about that alignment, when you say leadership style, I don't hear a leader. I hear management style. And when we talk about management versus leadership, or management and leadership, I prefer to say, there are management styles, I agree. Command and control, right? Whack-a-mole? You know, how many of you work for a whack-a-mole manager? I'd like to give you feedback. He said, not a problem, I got a rubber mallet for that. But when I hear management style disguised as leadership, because I believe leadership is a personal thing, not an accountability thing. And so I would ask that for clarity in the fact that, are we talking about management styles? And if we are we talking about culture? Because if we're talking about culture, folks, we're not talking about wrong, we're talking about an agreement. I agreed to join the United States military. It did not work out very well for me. I didn't really, you have a problem with authority. I said, you assume I gave you authority. Then they pulled out my contract and went, you see this, buddy? I said, yes, sir. I got a medal a couple of years later. But that required conformity. So when you say management, I say agreement. Have I agreed to be managed? If you say leadership style, what is a leadership style? Is that person self-aware? I'm pretty staunch in my leadership definition. And so I'd have more questions about that in particular. IT leadership, how many IT leaders in here? How many non-IT leaders in here? How many people know that they're management and not leadership? Yeah, there's the ambiguity, there's the confusion. I would argue there's a handful of managers in here. I'd also argue that you can't lead without management. You manage all the time, don't you? Developers manage their sprint backlog. Product owners manage their product backlog if you pay them extra money and beg them and drag them in. So to be more succinct with you, though, when I heard leadership style, what I actually hear is management style. And if I've agreed to be managed, then your style will be dictated to me. If you're a leader, then we're talking about bi-directional communication. I can give you feedback. And if we don't have that feedback, then we're not talking about leadership anymore. Christopher, last night you mentioned an individual and his leadership, and I talked about the 4 quadrants of L1 to L4 leadership, but you had a spin that I think was helpful in how they talked about an axes, right?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, we're consultants. You want a graph for it? But what was that axis that you were talking about?
Sure. I'll explain that. And let me say to you, and your question is, as I'm sitting here listening to Scotty and thinking about whether I have anything to add, I think maybe your question would be better asked to those leaders in order to capture their attention and build their awareness. So to me, position power doesn't imply that they're demonstrating any leadership. So I'll probably echo Scotty's comment there about management versus leadership. But in terms of this, boy, this is very personal. I've worked with someone for a little over a year as a coach and consultant to me. And this week, I gave them the unfortunate news that I can no longer take them to clients. And the reason is that when they get excited, they go unaware, and they get very abrasive, they interrupt, they show no respect. If they're listening, they're not hearing, because the moment they hear something that they don't like, they start refuting, instead of saying, tell me more. And I've observed this myself, and I've even had some clients come to me and say, this doesn't go along with your message of responsibility. So for years, I've dealt with the situation with clients of asking me, what do I do when I have somebody who exhibits difficult behavior, but they produce results? Their skills are so important, we, quote, need them. How many of you understand that situation? Right. And what's the first principle of that situation if you're truly coming from this perspective? What's the first principle? If you think you have somebody that's irreplaceable, right, and they're problematic, you better start finding a way to replace them as soon as possible. Yes? Yeah. So Jack Welch had a very simple 2x2 matrix at General Electric, and it was pretty simple. It was values and results. And every year they put all of their leadership in their performance review process into one of the 4 quadrants. And if you're producing results and demonstrating the values of the organization, you're a star, you're an A player, you're given promotions and better assignments and bigger budgets, and you know, and you're the future of the company. If you are exhibiting the value and not producing the results, you're developed. You're a keeper. They want you on the bus because you exhibit the culture, the values of the organization. We need to get you delivering results. If you are delivering results while tossing the values of the organization, then you're put on a very short leash, a very short performance plan, and moved out. So for me, it became clear to me that I had someone who was in that quadrant of producing great results. I've learned a ton from this person. I'm very grateful for all I've learned and all that he's brought. And it cannot continue, can it? Can't continue.
Not if we value integrity.
Not if I value integrity and if I teach responsibility.
It would be a good value to have, I think. Like nice product.
Right. So I don't know if we gave you any insight to your question about different leadership styles. I think there are as many leadership styles as there are people. And I tend not to bucket people very much. Mostly what I want to do is I want to understand them, and I want to understand if they're willing to play a bigger game. Right? So the idea of a bigger game is that I run into lots of people in the workplace who want to be the master, the expert of a relatively small game. And they want to protect it from everybody else, so they're constantly fighting battles to protect the space. And the mistake that I see them making in terms of awareness is that they're all alone, and no wonder they have to fight because they're so alone. And what I've learned is, if you can play a bigger game, if you can figure out how to serve your peer leaders or peer managers, if you can figure out how to serve all of them and all the suppliers and all the customers and all the employees, right, then what happens is that you attract more partners to you to help you accomplish your purpose. And I'm a walking guinea pig for this. About 6 or 7 years ago, I set out to essentially teach the world about the responsibility process. Nobody authorized me to do this but me. And nobody gave me a plan to how to get it done. I simply have this huge vision that I see the responsibility process in every office, every classroom, every church, every home in the world. And in the last 6 years, people have stepped up on a translation process the translation project, that this is translated into 22 languages now, including Klingon. So if you go to christopheravery.com/poster, you can download a PDF of this, and it has the teaching points on the back, which are up here. Some of them are up here now. And the most amazing thing about the last 6 years of my life is that I am now a part of a worldwide army of people who are out teaching, promoting, studying, using, coaching the responsibility process. I never fail to have assistance everywhere I turn. So the idea of, how large of a game are you playing? How large of a game can you play? Right? And if it scares you, just remember that the bigger it is, the more help you attract. And you can do that inside of a corporation. And you'll probably be much more loved. So I want to take a moment. Can I get members of the Leadership Gift Program and others stand up here, make yourselves known? So these are some folks who are part of that army. And if you have questions, they have a button on that says, ask me about the leadership gift. And they'll be hanging around. Tony, thank you. Scotty's part of this group. And I'll be around all day and can tell you more about it if you'd like.
I have a question. How many of you have been in Agile 5+ years? Show of hands. How many of those people, or even some of you others that have come here now, intend to go back to work on Monday and change the whole world because it's wrong? How many of you did that when you first found out about all this stuff? Yeah, me too. I was like, oh, boss, you're insane. And they said, Scotty, you're unemployed. So one of the clear distinctions that I want to talk about, Christopher, we talk constantly about how to do this. You didn't have a roadmap of how. So we talk about how to do this. And Christopher has a great statement. He says, leadership books abroad tell you what you need to do. And then it just dawned on me from an observatory or an observation of here is that we just told you what to do. And so I want to make a distinction that we're not talking about action. Please do not go to work on Monday and say, man, I went to Ohio State University, so you know that this thing is fantastic. What I want you to do is remember that this is a mental state. So when we go back to that slide as it comes up, these aren't behaviors. This is not the, I'm going to obligate you to do something. This is not, I'm blaming you and vocalizing my mental state. This is the erosion of my leadership. This is me beating up me because I'm just standing there stewing. How many times have you guys been ticked off at your boss and you're just like, I can't say anything because he's my boss, but man, I got all kinds of stuff going on in here. That's the erosion that we're talking about. To be very clear today, we're not talking about the act of holding someone to account or the act of going and say, well, I have to go to this meeting, so I'm going to this meeting. It's the mental state that you went to that meeting in. It's that journey we talk about. And every time we give this conversation with people to say, whoa, 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 we're not talking about actually blaming and getting into an argument with your spouse, because guys, you know that we're just wrong. So what happens is we're not talking about getting in that argument. We're talking about the fact that I'm going to go now do something that I love to do, like I'm going to go play my music. But I'm going to go play my music in a mental state of blaming you for pissing me off. So I play heavy metal. And then when I leave, I feel better, but not really. So recognize, folks, that we are in fact talking about how you think, not how you behave. If you choose to behave based on how you think, and you are below this line, I would argue that you probably get a lot of feedback from your boss at work. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And so that's one of the most important things. And so I want to give to you guys now an accuracy and completion statement. And this is a personal request from me to you because I was in the military. I have a lot of anxiety. Anybody else here have anxiety? Yeah. Pills don't work, by the way. That's what I hear. But what I can tell you is that when my boss comes in and says, come here at 2 o'clock, meet me in my office at 2, they may say it in passing. Walk by and say, hey, you got 10 minutes at 2? What happens to the rest of your day? Man, he found out about his daughter. He found out what I did last night.
Pass them out.
And all of a sudden, I'm in this position to where my anxiety is all flared up because I am mentally going to blame myself for everything I think he found out about. No other reason for the boss to talk to me. I go down to his office, I walk in there, and I said, look, I know exactly what you're going to say. And they always get that weird smile like, really? Go ahead. And what I found out was he was actually going to tell me about the raise that came through or that, hey, your project got approved. And I'm not allowing this individual to deliver good news because of their positional authority. So managers, please, 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 and thank you for being accurate. Please be complete. Say, hey, I got good news for you at 2 o'clock. Can you stop by my office? What kind of day do you have now? It's truly in your communication. So our leaders or our managers, for the lady back there, our managers are contributing to us. And believe me, if you give me a reason to beat myself up, I mastered that years ago. I'll sit around all day long until eventually I'm just completely disabled, nothing to do. Why do I care? I'm ready to quit. You see that over here. And so this mental state is our own erosion of ourselves. And yes, there are people that are contributory if we allow them. So how can I contribute to help people not be at effective me? Being complete as well as accurate. And so that's something you can actually take back Monday and say, hey boss, I want to be accurate and complete with you right now. Be careful of that one too. Get permission.
How many of you have not been introduced to the responsibility process before and would like a 5-minute overview? Enough?
Yeah?
How many of you would be really sick if we did that because you've been introduced to it many times? Oh, good, no hands.
Yeah, Christopher's got $100 for those people.
So I'll walk through this really quickly. So I set out to try and understand shared responsibility 25 years ago and how to teach people how to tap into that. And so I realized it had something to do with this subjective feeling of ownership, which varies in all of us, right? You feel a sense of ownership for different things than I feel a sense of ownership for, and the people next to you. So I went in search of trying to understand, and I found tons of stuff written by success gurus and existentialists, all the way back to Socrates. And generally what they said is that the first principle of success in any endeavor is to take 100% personal what? Responsibility. Here's the problem. They didn't tell you how, just that you should. And I ran into this research program that noticed that when things go wrong, people go into these coping mechanisms. And I went back to the writings, the wisdom literature on responsibility, and it said, responsibility is about what you do, not when things are going well, not when things are going your way, but when things are going what? Wrong. They say it's not how many times you fall down, it's how many times you what? Get up. It's not about what happens to you, it's about how you respond to what happens to you. I thought, wow, this research program is onto something. The language and the psychology and of responsibility is about how we respond, literally the ability to respond. And so I joined that research team, and I've been part of that team ever since, and I've actually helped to build this, but I'm not the originator of this research. But what it says is that every time something goes wrong and you feel this anxiety, what's happening is that you have an intention, you put yourself in motion towards something. I want to enjoy this coffee, and then you bump into somebody and spill it, right? And at that moment, you're stopped from your intention, and you have a problem. And that's the source of anxiety, frustration, upset. And you now know more about anxiety and stress than most psychiatrists do, by the way.
Well, I'm agile, so I'm an immovable object. So by all means, run into this.
So it turns out that when that happens, the moment we're upset, our mind goes into a hyperactive search for cause and effect, and it goes right to blame, where the cause-effect logic in this mental state is that you're in the position of effect, and the cause is where? Somebody around you, probably on your contact list, probably on the short list. Right? And the premise of blame is that your problem isn't going to go away until they, what? Change. Which is why it's a position of victimhood, because none of us are any good at changing other people. So we can stay in this mental state for a moment or an hour or a day or a week or a lifetime, or we can get off of it. As long as you stay there, you're going to get to keep the problem, because the problem isn't going to go away until they change. If you get off of blame, you land in justify. The difference between blame and justify is the cause-effect equation is very similar, but now instead of a person, it's a set of circumstances beyond my what? Control. And we get to stay in the problem until the circumstances what? Change. Right? This is why so many people go to the sidelines when the weather's bad, when the economy's bad, when whatever. The number one justify I get in my consulting work for corporations is, that's just the way it is around here. That's the way it is in this company, that's the way it's always been, that's the way it's always going to be. If you find yourself frequently complaining about the same thing at the proverbial water cooler or bar, you might be in justify about it, right? Because you get to stay there until you're willing to actually confront it, see the truth about what you can take action to change you so that you can change the world. When we get off at justify, what happens is this little sorting routine in our mind doing the cause-effect search, it flips the external variable and says, well, we tried external specific, external diffuse. Let's flip that external variable. Oh, I'm the dummy, I'm the dolt, I'm the stupid one. Gosh, will I never learn? Somebody shoot me. So shame is simply pointing lay blame at ourselves. Society has taught you if you do this, you're taking responsibility. Not according to our research, and the reason is, in responsibility, we are free, we're powerful, we're at choice, we know what to do to move forward. In shame, the premise is, I'm not good enough, I lack. And in fact, I deserve to have this problem because I shouldn't have stuck my neck out that way anyway. And like these others, we can stay in this position in our mind for a minute or an hour or a day or a lifetime, or we can get off of it because it's just a mental state. And when we get off of shame, we tend to graduate to obligation, and obligation is the mental state of have to, don't want to. So how many of you have to do all kinds of things you don't want to do, have to be all kinds of things you don't want to be, have to put up with all kinds of things you don't want to put up with? Yeah. How many of you have some really stupid meeting you have to go to tomorrow? You wouldn't go except that you what? Have to, right? So obligation is the mental state of feeling trapped. Responsibility is the mental state of feeling free. Look how close they are together. Society has also taught you that if you're being good, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, if you're keeping your commitments, even if you don't like it, you're being a responsible person. But we know in the mental state of obligation, your performance is barely adequate to get a pass because you're feeling trapped and your motivation is to simply survive the trap. And you can't show up in that stupid meeting and be present and in the now and authentic because you might say the truth. What a silly, stupid meeting. Can we do something different? But that might be a little risky, so you step back. And it turns out that until we actually refuse to operate from the mental state of obligation, can we start to get to the mental state of responsibility, which is where we seem to have far more access to our complex reasoning abilities, and it's a marvelous place to operate from. So this is the responsibility process. There's a couple of other positions that you can find lots more information about. But increasingly, people around the world are seeing this as so active every day in themselves and in everybody they work with that we want to understand how to deal with this. Well, so the question is, once you understand how this works, well, how do you interact with it? Well, here's how you interact with it. Oh, look at this mess. All right. What do we want? What do we need to go face so that we can learn how to have power over that? That's the process. So thanks for letting me take a few minutes to walk through that. What would you add, Scotty?
I'd take this under advisement, thanks.
You take it under advisement.
No, the note that I put here is something I wanted to make clear because sometimes we don't. And, we talk about the way to do something. What's the way? And the way, once again, assumes there was an agreement. So it's a way. This is a way to explain some extremely complex dynamics that are at play when 1,000 people work in an organization. I know one company right now that's going through a bit of change for themselves that Tony's working with. And, in that organization, those guys are 30,000 employees strong. You really think any one of us are going to go and change this company? Not unless I just had a Dan Pink talk at an Agile conference with Christopher. They come back and say, here's what we're going to do. But so I wanted to be clear with you guys is that this is a way to explain and navigate, similar to how mathematics is a way to document relationships. So take it for that. and understand, what am I doing? What am I? There's a statement I'm hoping will come up here in a minute. I don't know if you guys saw these quotes, but one of them said that the first step is awareness and the second step is acceptance. How many of you as agile folks, or agilists, if you will, when you hear the word acceptance, you have an idea about that now? And not a year ago, 2 years ago, someone said acceptance to you, you probably thought of childhood acceptance, because acceptance has taken on a new meaning. Well, that means when you start using vocabulary like obligation, my brain goes somewhere really wide and really deep. When you come to me and say responsibility, or someone says, you need to take responsibility for that, can I get clarity on what exactly that means to me, please? Because I'm not entirely sure you know what you said to me. Because I'm pretty sure that I was the responsible one walking in the door. And I don't want to tell you that you're wrong. So we'd like to gain that clarity. And so that's what I want to point out to you guys, is that when you're looking at, oh, way, there's your way, there's their way. You and I are probably two different, very different people. But I bet we can get a whole lot done if we agree to. If we don't cognitively just declare it, we're about to make an agreement. How many of you logged into a company and the first thing they did was give you 27 documents and said, sign the bottom of this, please read them all? How many of you read them all? How many of you have ever written an end user license agreement before? Anybody ever read one? And not until it did something I didn't want it to do, I go, wait a minute. I agreed to that. Yeah, so let's be obvious that we are making agreements. That one little technique alone can change so many things for you, because you've now brought everyone else to your level of awareness on this agreement. And I might say, you know what? No, I want to wear khaki shorts to work every day, and you don't think I have sexy knees. I'm going to go work at Google instead. Those are the kinds of things we want to exploit. So this was something that changed even how I did my own work. And I look at integration, it was all about not concerted effort, byproducts. How many of you do phased deliverables or phased-based projects or sprint deliverables, required documentation? You still trying to fight that battle? No, everybody believes Agile has no documentation. You only do documents that you want. I've got clients that will come in and say, hey, I need this document because we're an insurance company and this is a compliance issue. So let me ask you, can we get this document another way? Is there a way for us to make this document a byproduct of how our team works, rather than some expectation you have of the team to fill out this document they hate? Because they'd much rather go paint pictures, right? They're artists, that's what they do. So integration for me then becomes an opportunity for an event, an awareness event, an intention event, a confront event, something I'm going to ramp up and do. Sometimes I got to get myself up a little bit before I can go confront that guy. How many of you have, this is something I'll give you, how many of you have a guy or girl at work that you walk by in the hallway and you don't really know them, but you seem to always say hey to one another, and you just call them your hey friend? On the opposite side of that pole, the same thing that I would argue creates that for you, creates this individual that you know if you bring them information, they're going to come at you pretty hard. If I give you feedback about something, are you going to just take immediate defensive responses to me? You guys work with people like that? Want a tip on how to disarm them? Tell them. Say, hey, I got some news for you, but typically when I give you news, you kind of blow up, and they go, no, I don't, just tell me. I'm dating your daughter. You can disarm them by exploiting their behavior. That's what Agile is about. We don't fix, we exploit. You take on Scrum and Agile, now you know exactly what's wrong with your business, but we still don't have a way to fix it. And so what happens is I can preempt that and say, hey, Mark, when we get together, when it goes this direction, I'm noticing this. Is that a problem for you? Is there something I say? Is there something I can do? And immediately they say, no, I don't mean to upset you. And I said, that's interesting. I had a girlfriend once that said, I don't mean to keep cheating on you. I just keep doing it. And then it found out I was at cause for allowing it. I kept coming back. So with those things, I would take them, what are we at, 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
So I'll say in my last 30 seconds, I'm going to be here all day. Come give us a chat. I'm sure there's questions that are not answered. I highly recommend that you guys take a look at Christopher's work. Join us. Come talk to Joe. Come talk to Jessica. Come talk to these folks. They're like us. If you ask them a question, they'll talk. So thanks for coming.
Thank you, Scotty. Thank you for being here, for allowing us to hopefully provoke some thinking a little bit. I hope something we said impinged enough to start working in your mind. If you want to know more about the Leadership Gift Program, it's a leadership development program that I operate that has an online presence, so you can do it anywhere, anytime. Ask one of these folks or ask me. Check out the leadershipgift.com website. And I'll be here also all day today and at the IT Martini event tonight. And I've got $1,000 to give away. Just saying. Thank you very much.